Good afternoon, everyone. So let's go ahead with the part three of module five. So I'll just quickly recap of what we had done before. So we were talking about the WDM network. The WDM network is used to efficiently use the bandwidth which is provided by the optical fiber. So you have end users, they can use LED or lasers, and all the signals from each user is on a particular wavelength which is assigned to the user, and these individual signals are then multiplexed or coupled using a multiplexer or a coupler, and the single signal, which is of a very large bandwidth, is then transmitted through the fiber, and then at the receiver side it is split using a splitter or a demultiplexer, and using tunable filters is then sent to the destination of the receiver. So we've seen that the WDM network can be of two types: the broadcast and select network strategy, uh, which is the first part. However, it is disadvantageous because the power that is used to send the signal from source to destination gets split between the source and the destination. Therefore, there is a better strategy, which is known as the wavelength routing network. Here, the signal is sent only between the source and the destination, and the power is not wasted or split compared to the broadcast and select WDM network. So this we have seen before. Then how does wavelength routing actually happen? So there is a physical path which is established using the optical fiber, which we can see, and then there is a logical part which is established using the light paths, which we cannot see, which is basically the virtual topology. And we saw in detail the diagram B, which you can see on the screen, that between node A and B, transmission and reception both can happen. Transmission using light path on lambda 1, and reception using wavelength lambda 2. And also we can see that there are 5 nodes. However, the number of wavelengths which can be used for transmission and reception is only 3. So this is also something which we had seen previously. Then the types of the WDM networks, this can be single hop network. Here there is a direct communication between the two nodes, and your data is basically only in the optical domain. Since the distance is very less, you don't need to have multiple hops. Then there is a multiple hop network, in which the distance is very large, and therefore between the source and destination there is also intermediate nodes. These nodes can act as routers, and they will have the capability of processing the signal which they receive. The most basic use of intermediate nodes in this case would be as regenerators, where the signal is received as an optical signal, converted to electrical signal, amplified, and then reconverted back into the optical signal, and then sent to the next intermediate node. Then we had looked at the public telecommunications network, or PSTN, which is known in very popularly. And this is of 3 types: the long haul networks, the metropolitan network, and the access network. The core or the backbone network is one which connects the users globally. Uh, the metro or the backhaul network or the metropolitan area network is the one that will connect the users within a country, if you want to imagine that way. And we'll use the optical ad hoc multiplexers to connect users to the network. And then there is a third layer, which is known as the access network, where we reside and we want to connect globally, or using a metropolitan access network. And the range of this access network, the local area network, is very, very less. And we need to use the remote node RN, which connects the users in the local area network to a local office or a telephone exchange. So these are few things which we had seen. And we had just started with the optical network transmission modes, layers, and protocols. The basic idea of this is to have certain rules, so that we can transmit and receive the signals properly. So in this regard, we have 2 types of networks. The first one is known as a synchronous network. Uh, a synchronous network is a synchronous network is a network in which uh, there is a multiplexing that occurs using for multiple channels. And we saw what is the disadvantage of a Synchronous transmission, the PCM transmission, which is mostly used, and there's got to be bit stuffing, which is not a helpful criteria for us. Therefore, there can be better ideas, and the best idea is to directly multiplex the signals. So there's an example here which shows that on top you're doing the bit stuffing. You can have 2 Mbps combined into 8 Mbps, which combines into 34 Mbps, and so many channels have been multiplexed. Finally, get 140 Mbps. The disadvantage here is that each of this signal will have its own clock, and the clocks will not be synchronized. Therefore, we can use the approach which is shown on the bottom, where you just take 64 channels, which are 2 Mbps each, and you just combine them, multiplex them to directly get 140 Mbps. So in this regard, you have two kinds of synchronous optical networks. One is the SONET, which stands for Synchronous Optical Networks. It works basically with STS formats. The STS formats is basically the synchronous transport signal. The frame structure for the SONET is has a time period of 125 microseconds, because there are 8,000 frames per second. This structure can is used in North America with a DS124 channel, transporting 64 kbps of data. Therefore, the total data rate becomes 1.54 Mbps, 544 Mbps, which is the basic rate. And it can be also used in the European countries using 30 channels with a total data rate of 2.048 Mbps. So this is the use of the SONET network, and you can see the frame structure of the SONET, the STS1 frame structure and the STS-N frame structure. The structures are the same. STS1 is the basic frame, which has a total of 90 bytes, out of which 3 are used for section and line overhead, whereas the remaining 87 bytes will be used for envelope capacity. The total frame time, as I told you, is 125 microseconds, and it consists of 9 bytes. Now, the same structure can be used for STS-N. So if we have STS2 frame, so to say, then you'll have 2 into 90 bytes, 180 bytes. 3 bytes will be for section and line overhead, whereas the remaining bytes will be for envelope capacity. The number of rows just will be the same. You can have other signals which can also be accommodated. The basic STS1 frame structure will be for 9 rows, 90 bytes. Therefore, a total of 810 bytes or 6480 bits per 125 microsecond frame will be there. So the base rate for the SONET will be 51.840 Mbps. I told you the first 3 bytes in each row will consist of the transport overhead bytes, leaving the remaining bytes for the payload for the data. The other bytes will be the remaining 774 bytes will consist of the data payload, and the transport overhead bytes which we are using will be used for framing, scrambling, any errors if they occur, any synchronization or multiplexing. So the data which is carried by the SONET could be voice, video, and other signals as well. A counterpart of the SONET, which is used in the European countries, is known as SDH, which stands for Synchronous Digital Hierarchy. So it only differs from SONET in its terminology, but the operation is basically the same. So the total frame time is 125 microseconds, and instead of STS, now it is referred to as Synchronous Transport Module (STM). And the basic STM1 rate is 155.520 Mbps, which will correspond to the optical carrier 3, which is STS3. So this is the main difference between SONET and STS. That is, the STS starts with OC3. That is, the STM starts with STS3, where you'll have 3 into STM. And you can have the European 140 Mbps synchronous signal, and this can be mapped to the STM1 signal with certain overheads. So you can see in the table that we have OC1, OC3, OC9, and so on, which is on the SONET signal hierarchy, whereas the corresponding SDH is also mentioned. So STM starts with 155.52, which actually corresponds to OC3 or STS3. So this is the main difference between the two. The rest of the things remain the same. Next, we move to the asynchronous networks, and the most popular of the asynchronous networks is the ATM, asynchronous transfer module, and or mechanism. And this is basically a packetized multiplexing and switching technique. It basically combines the packet and the circuit switching. We have details of packet and circuit switching later, but the major difference between the two is in circuit switching, the entire data is transmitted at the same time, whereas in packet switching, the data is transmitted in small packets, and these are combined from various users and sent, and at the receiver, then the packets are separated based on where their destination is. So ADM will transfer the information using cells, and these cells are fixed size, and each cell will contain information which will identify the source, but it will contain less data than the packets. And you can see the format of the cell. It has 5 bytes of headers and 48 bytes of payload. ADM differs from the static TDM, because in TDM each user will wait for his or her time to send the data, whereas in ATM, since it is asynchronous, time slots are made available on demand. So that is the major difference between TDM and ATM. Uh, for perfect segmentation and assembling the various cells at the receiver or destination, each cell will contain the significant information in addition to the data, which is known as the header. So you can see that the header will be of 5 bytes and the payload will be of 48 bytes. Now, every single byte in the header will include information about the destination, path, channel, and error control. So before sending the cells, uh, we establish a virtual connection between source and destination using light paths, and all the connections will follow the same path within the network. And every control bit could be on or off, 0 or 1. It will generate a virtual path, and this is known as a virtual channel identifier, uh, which will be stored in a table, and it will help inform the destination about the receiving packet which is coming. Next comes the OSI reference model, which is something which we should have studied in the computer communication networks. So it consists of 7 layers, as you can see. We'll start with the uppermost layer, which is known as the application layer. And this is the layer that we see, the World Wide Web. This is the layer that we see. It provides a means for users to access information. And this is the platform over which we get all the data. So it is basically the most important interface for the users to interact with the net. Then you have the presentation layer. It transforms the data to provide a standard interface, the manner in which the data should be present. It ensures that. Then you have a session layer. It controls all the sessions, the dialogues between the devices, your laptop or phone. It also establishes, manages, and will end the connections depending on the users. And this connection can either be simplex or duplex or half duplex depending on the application. So the top 3 layers, 5, 6, and 7, session, presentation, and application, they are basically data driven levels. Next we come to the transport layer. It's one of the most important layers because it helps transfer the data between the end users, two users who are trying to communicate. And it relieves, in this manner, it relieves the upper layers from any transport concerns. So it is the only layer which takes care of entire transport. Uh, you can use any type of protocols here. You can have connection-oriented protocol or connection-less oriented protocol. And the job of the transport layer will be to keep track of the packets. And if they fail, then retransmit these packets. The most important or the most popular protocol which we are aware of is the TCP, transmission control protocol. It is a connection-oriented protocol, and the data transfer between the nodes is provided using flow control, multiplexing, and there's priority and security. Uh, next comes the network layer, and that provides the functional and procedural method for transmitting different length of data, and it maintains the quality of service which the transport layer on top is requesting. It also performs the routing functions. So you can use different kinds of routing like shortest path, open shortest path, distrust routing, different kinds of routings can be used. And uh, it also performs segmentation, desegmentation. Any errors are there, then it provides the delivery as well. And routers will operate at this layer for sending the data. Uh, this is the layer where the internet connection is made possible. Then we have the second layer, which is known as the data link layer, and here this is the layer which provides the functional many other mechanisms, procedure mechanisms, so that data can be transmitted between network entities. It also detects, potentially will correct errors that may occur depending on the protocol that we are using. So this is basically the layer, the data link layer, the layer which will bridge and switch the connectivity among the locally attached network nodes, uh, forming layer 2 domains, and this can be unicast or broadcast depending on the requirement. You can also have other kinds of protocols like CSMA-CA, CSMA-CD, which will sense the carrier, uh, detect the carrier, or correct the errors. It depends on the protocol which we are doing. So I've listed some other examples as well. We have high-level data link control, HDLC, or you can have advanced data communication control, ADCCP, and these are basically used for point-to-point or packet switched networks. And the last layer, the bottommost layer, is one of the physical layer. This is the layer that we are able to see, and this is where the users will connect. So the most popular example would be a LAN cable, which is connected to, let's say, your device, the laptop, and the other end is connected to a switch. So this could, in our case, in optical networks, this would be the optical fiber cable. So it establishes, it will and terminate a connection depending on whether you have the cable attached to the device or not. Uh, it will form basically the communication medium. It will ensure that the resources are effectively shared among the multiple users depending on the kind of protocol and rules which we are using. So the basic job of the physical layer would be to resolve any contentions between the users. It will also have the job to ensure that there is some flow control, and data is converted as sent by the user and what the OSI layer is requiring, and any signal requirements which are there from the communications channel. So these will be the things which the OSI reference layers will do for us, and this is one of the most important kind of a model which we have seen. The other important model which we see is the TCP/IP layer, or the Internet Protocol layer, which will come in the next part.